weekly Trusted Visions podcast. Stacy, we covered last week, and this month we're covering really the M&A space for advisors because we've seen this really heat up over probably the last 3-5 years. And as we continue to have an aging advisor base, you're seeing this more and more. So last week we kind of talked about, hey, before you even start to think you want to sell, what are some things to consider? And so I think that the best next step would be for this week, let's cover where do you start as an advisor that wants to sell their practice? Um, I'm going to hand that question over to you because that's such a vague question, but I know you have expertise there. For our audience, where do they start when they decide, yes, I'm going to sell?
This is interesting because I think it's no matter what your age, right? You should always be thinking of a succession plan in an emergency basis, right? You get hit by the bus or, heaven forbid something were to happen. So I just want to put a quick plug for that. If you don't have an emergency plan in place, I highly recommend you do that either with anyone you know that you would trust or with your broker dealer itself. Most broker dealers should have that, although it may be at a lower multiple. So just be aware of that. Your ideal succession plan is not going to be that emergency plan. But while you're putting together your ideal succession plan, some things to be aware of as you start down that road. We talked last week a little bit about timing, and that does factor into this, right? If you're at 1 year, 5 year, I think that always layers on to the immediacy of how fast you need to take action and start getting in front of this. But let's say you're a ways down the road, but you do want to start slowing down. One of the things that I've seen more and more of, and really done successfully with some of these great enterprises in our space, is like a partial sale. So you could sell off like a 20% of your book, 40% of your book. You could keep it underneath that 50%, or maybe you divide out your book, your ABC clients, and you start selling off like tranches of your business. Maybe you want to stay in business for another 8 or 10 years. This allows you to get a little bit more time, right, for your family, for you to slow down, but not necessarily walk away from your really tight, close-knit clients or your clients that maybe you just aren't quite ready to hand off. So that's a good thing to think about as far as there's so many options and ways to structure your timing as you work into this arrangement. The second thing I wanted to cover was valuation. A lot of broker dealers will have internal assistance for this. Now they may use a firm like Truelytics, or there's plenty of them out there that help with the valuation of your book. There's advantages of going internally at your broker dealer. They should have all your reporting readily available to them. They should be able to see behind the scenes to the details that matter for that valuation. But they may also charge a fee for that service because it does take time. It isn't just it shouldn't be just a plug and play, right? They're going to want to look at different factors: the number of clients, the age of your clients. There's some intangibles, right? How engaged are you with the entire book versus maybe some older legacy clients that you don't necessarily see very often. So I think that's just be aware and ask the question of your broker dealer, are there internal resources for valuation? Now, the flip side of that, I've worked with advisors that want to keep that outside of their broker dealer. They feel like it's a little bit more trustworthy to be a third party.
Yep.
And so there's plenty of solutions for that too. I think, of course, well-known one, FP transitions, you could always use. Again, there's going to be a fee for that service, but with it being third party, that some offices feel better about that.
Yep.
All right. And then when you go to find that successor, I think you also need to take a deep dive if you're going to keep internal within the broker dealer or if you're going to look outside of that. And that does open up some possibilities if you look outside of your broker dealer, even if it's, if they have to transfer you to you or you transfer to them, it opens up to the right fit. I know, Jeremy, you and I are talking with an office now that only wants someone if they are inside of the broker dealer. That's fine. It just limits who we can introduce to them in trying to find that good fit to them. All right, Jeremy, what are some good expectations or realistic expectations when you're actually structuring the deal? Let's get into the numbers a bit.
Oh, the good old numbers. And so what I would say before I dive into the numbers, I'd really start and add on to your point, Stacy, about timing is to our audience, the last thing you want to do is have to create a fire sale. and we've run across this time and time again, somebody got into a regulatory issue or a health issue. The reality is, if you don't have that timing set in place before that life event happens, don't expect the multiples that we're going to speak about here. So just wanted to add that on. But great question in terms of expectations. And we run across this all the time, Stacy, of, hey, I had someone reach out to me, told me they'd give me a 6 times multiple on my book. Audience, don't take offense to this. You're not going to get 5, 6, 7, 8 times multiples on your practice. A lot of times people will tell you that to get you engaged, to get you from exploring other multiples and go down the path. And then when you get to that 11th hour, then it's, oh, well, we didn't realize this was the age of your clients, or we didn't realize that you had this many small accounts. The typical multiple in the industry, and this fluctuates somewhat, but the typical multiple in the industry is 1.5 to 3 times. Now, there can be variances. We've seen it as high as 3.5, 4 times. The reality is, to answer your question, Stacy, it depends. And to our audience, it depends on several factors. Is how much money do you want down? Do you want 20, 25% down and the rest of it paid out over a 3-5 year period? If so, you're going to get a higher multiple than somebody in our audience saying, I want 50, 60, 70% down and the rest of it paid over 1 to 2 years. That multiple is going to drastically decrease into that 1.5, 2 times range, because that buyer is taking on the majority of the risk with the more money they put down and the quicker you want paid out. Do you owner finance? And so if you're selling your practice, are you financing it in-house where they're just making monthly payments to you plus whatever interest rate for a period of time versus them going to a live oak, which either one is fine, but the easier you make it for the buyer, the bigger multiple you're going to get from that perspective. And I've seen deals where an advisor got 3.5 times multiple because they stretched it out over a 10-year buyout period. They took 25% down. They make equal monthly payments on the rest of the portion over the next 10 years that's owner financed. And that was a heavy commission-based book, but they were able to get 3.5 times because it's much easier for the buyer to go through that process and pay out over a period of time. So I hate to not be able to answer a question, or I hate to answer a question with another question, but to our audience, it really depends on how you structure the deal. And that's where, like Stacy had said, your broker dealer can help with a lot of this. Not saying they're biased, but I have seen a lot of the broker dealers, their valuations come in lower than what's out there. And so working with a team like Trusted Visions, as your client had told us, Stacy, hey, I really need an advisor to help with this, process of going down, selling our book. And that's where we come in to really help with that. And, the multiples can be all over the place. To the audience, again, I'll say, anybody that's telling you they're giving you 5, 6 times multiples, the reality is it's not going to happen. If it does happen, something's disastrous going to happen to your legacy. Not throwing, insult to injury, but that's just the reality. So I love this topic, Stacy. I look forward to continuing to cover it for the rest of the month. Contact information, Stace.
Yes, you can reach me at 641-919-6722. And my email is stacy.martin@trustedvisions.com.
And for me, info@trustedvisions.com, or you can call or text 480-430-5012. Audience, I hope you have a great week. Stacy, as always, I greatly appreciate you being on these and look forward to covering next week's.